From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks very much, Ollie Barrett. Thank you. It's Wednesday, October 31st, 2018, which means one thing and one thing only. The Richie Allen Show is on. No, it's Halloween. Happy Halloween, if that's your thing, you know, I don't know. It might be your thing. Strange beasts, strange kids wandering around the neighbourhood this afternoon wearing all sorts of weird and wonderful costumes. There used to be a time when people would dress up to be scary. Now children dress up as whatever celebrity that they are into at this particular time. And because I'm over 40, I don't recognise any of them. Anyway, this is the Richie Allen Show. Far more serious things to discuss than Halloween. Let's do it. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
And I've got a terrific show for you today. I'll be joined this hour by a remarkable woman. Sibel Edmonds will join me live from Turkey. Sibel, of course, is well known to you as the founder, editor and publisher of the terrific News Bud. She also founded the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition. You remember that as well. And she's written several books. She's following the story of Jamal Khashoggi, his murder. And it basically landed right on her and in her lap, effectively. She's in Turkey to set up a bureau for News Bud. And she's going places and asking questions with respect to the Khashoggi murder. Questions not being asked on mainstream or commercial media. The terrific Sibel Edmonds joins me. And later on then in the next hour, for the first time, I welcome Chuck Ocelli to the programme. He's got a terrific radio show, does Chuck, the Ochelli Effect. It's really good. I've been listening to it a lot lately. So I want to introduce you to Chuck. He joins me in the second hour. We'll be rounding up the other big stories of the day and finding out a bit about Chuck himself. Why not? It's Wednesday's Richie Allen Show. Live on Fab Radio 2 here in Manchester, the greatest city in the northwest of England, in the world. And we're live on richieallen.co.uk, triggerwarning.tv and TuneIn Radio. Lovely. Yes. Yeah, timed it today. Welcome. Are you of the Halloween type, are you? Are you running around now, knocking on doors and annoying the bejesus out of people? Well, if you are, thanks for taking me with you through the medium of technology. Glad that you did. Good show today. Looking forward to it. I better rush through a few stories so that we don't run over time. I want to get straight on to Sibel in Turkey in around about 20 minutes' time. Covered this yesterday. It's not the biggest story of the day. You probably think it isn't important, but it is kind of important. I mentioned yesterday that the editor of Waitrose Food magazine, William Sitwell, who's known to UK listeners, I suppose, from being on MasterChef, well, he was accused of hate crime because he jokingly suggested that he would write a series of articles about killing vegans. Now, he said this because a woman called Celine Nelson wrote to him and asked him why there were not more features about plant-based recipes. This guy is a food critic, he loves his meat, and he joked about killing vegans. Daft joke, maybe a bit insensitive, maybe not funny, I don't think it's funny, but he's had to step down from his job. He's lost his job with Waitrose Food magazine because he made a bad joke. I'm not going to labour the point. I've talked about this far too many times. Where are we going if people can't say anything without somebody demanding that they lose their job and then succeed? Waitrose said his email doesn't represent our views about vegans and vegan food. Do you think we didn't know that? Do you think when he made his silly joke that we thought, Waitrose believes in killing vegans? The world is mad. However, fellow journalists, including Giles Coran, who writes for The Times, said he's great sympathy for Sitwell. It was a stupid email, but shouldn't be a career ender. Vegans are not a race or a gender or a sexual orientation or a differently abled group, he said. Remember yesterday I played you some audio. Radio 5 Live's Nicky Campbell asked if what Sitwell did was a hate crime. These are dangerous times for free speech, folks. You've got to mind your P's and Q's. Every time you open your mouth, you better think hard about the consequences of what you're going to say. It might end up in you losing your job, even if you're making a bad joke. It seems that bad jokes are against the law now. Let's get into far more serious news. Turkey, according to the BBC today, has given its first official statement on how the writer Jamal Khashoggi was killed. The Turks are saying he was immediately strangled, then dismembered. Keep that in mind. This statement came from Chief Prosecutor Irfan Fidan, and there's been weeks of reports in local media in Turkey about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate. Fidan, the prosecutor, said a meeting with his Saudi counterpart on Monday wasn't very helpful. There were no concrete results. The Saudis haven't commented on that meeting. The Turkish statement said today, in accordance with plans made in advance, the victim, Jamal Khashoggi, was choked to death immediately after entering the Consulate General of Saudi Arabia. His body was then dismembered and destroyed, again in line with advanced plans. This is the Turkish prosecutor. So as you know by now, the Saudis at first denied any knowledge of it. He's a well-known government critic, by the way, in case you don't know who he is, for many years. And the Saudis said that he walked out of the building alive after going there for a meeting on October 2nd. The Saudis then said that Khashoggi's killing was premeditated and a result of a rogue operation. The Saudis have said that they've arrested 18 suspects who will be prosecuted in Saudi Arabia. The Turks want the suspects to be extradited, and, well, it's all very confusing. A lot of questions not being asked. Sibel Edmonds is asking them. We'll talk to Sibel in about 15 minutes' time. In the meantime, to get a flavour of how the UK media is covering this, have a listen to Alistair Bunkle. Alistair is a Sky News correspondent. Here he is with Kay Burley.
So the Saudi chief prosecutor arrived in Istanbul at the weekend and has held 2.5, 3 days of meetings with his Turkish counterpart. He has now left Istanbul for Riyadh, and the Turks have explained some of what came out of that meeting. They say that Jamal Khashoggi was strangled as soon as he entered the consulate on the 2nd of October. His body was then dismembered and was disposed of. Now, we still don't know who disposed of the body and where it was disposed. We know that they have searched the garden and the well in the Consulate General's house and the consulate, and we know that they have briefly searched a forest outside of Istanbul, but no confirmation yet as to whether they found any of the body parts, and they are still asking officially in public the Saudi Arabians to come clean and reveal the location of the body. My sense is that the Turkish have known all along a lot more than they have made public, and they have been trying to push the Saudi Arabians to come clean. They have reiterated as well that it was a planned, premeditated murder, and of course that would fit in with the fact that 15 individuals came from Riyadh the day beforehand in various different teams, formed at the consulate, and then left that night and the following day, and 18 have been arrested.
So he basically said what I said, but he said it on Sky News today, and I played you that because the presenter of that programme, Kay Burley, then asks him a pertinent question. She asks a good question, does Kay, and we'll get into this with Sibel Edmonds soon.
Been much confusion over those black ops, though, haven't there? Every single day we're being told something different.
That's right, Kay. It's very confusing. Every single day we have been told something different, often something that contradicted or contradicts what we heard the day before. It's all very strange. Again, Sibel Edmonds, been following this from Turkey for a month now. Anyway, what did he say when Kay said it's all very confusing because they've been changing their statements from day to day? What did Alistair Bunkle say?
Well, I think there's three things here. Firstly, you've got what's coming out in particularly Turkish media, which tends to have been briefed by the Turkish government and Turkish officials. So there has been quite a continuous stream, although there's a bit of a lull over the last week or so, there's been quite a continuous stream of information coming out that way as the Turks have decided that's the route in which they want to feed information. Then you've had the Saudi Arabians initially denying anything and then putting their own version of events out there. For example, they said that the body was wrapped up in a rug and carried out by an unnamed individual, an unnamed Turkish individual, and disposed of. Well, that wouldn't tally with him being dismembered because it just wouldn't really be practical. And then, of course, you have, in a case like this, where you've always got both, I use this word sort of deliberately, but sort of global fascination and huge media interest, you'll always get rumour and speculation. And some of that will be accurate, a lot of it won't be.
Yeah, he didn't answer the question, really. He flapped around a bit there, and I think even the most mediocre journalist could do a better job than Alistair Bunkle. Some of the contradictions in terms of what has been said by the Turkish press, and even the press over here, are pretty mind-boggling, to say the least. And it's almost like, well, we'll just totally forget what we told you the other day. And that's not good. I'm looking forward to hearing from Sibel in a few minutes' time. Now, also today, related to this, the United States, you probably heard Ollie Barrett say this in the news. He said that the United States has called for a swift cessation of hostilities in Yemen. You heard that. Defense Secretary James Mattis and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have been saying that all parties need to take part in UN-led peace talks within the next 30 days. All very interesting, this. The murder of Khashoggi and this going side by side, the condemnation, not so much a condemnation, there's not really any condemnation coming from the US with respect to the slaughter of people in Yemen. But the fact that they're talking about a cessation of hostilities, it's very interesting. Interestingly enough, Theresa May, the UK Prime Minister, was asked about this at PMQs today and just wouldn't comment on it. Refused to join in the requesting of an armistice in Yemen. Interesting stuff. Right, Sibel Edmonds and all of that shortly. Here's an interesting one. You heard this at the top of the hour. Pakistani court has overturned the death sentence of a Christian woman who had been convicted of blasphemy back in 2010. And to be fair to the BBC, they've claimed today that this particular story has polarised Pakistan. It has done, actually. It has. I've been asking people. And I've been online today. I've been looking at various media, Pakistani media outlets. It has polarised people. A lot of people are in favour of this woman being murdered because she blasphemed, allegedly. It's mad, isn't it? Her name is Asia Bibi, and she's always maintained her innocence. She was accused of insulting the Prophet Muhammad in a row with her neighbours. But anyway, prosecutors have overturned the death sentence. What's going to happen to her in the meantime is anybody's guess. I suppose we'll find out in a few days' time or in due course. I'll tell you what is interesting. Wilson Chowdhury is based here. He's a British guy. And he's with the British Pakistani Christian Association. And he says to Sky News this afternoon that the conservative, even ultra-conservative interpretation of Islam continues to thrive even, in Pakistan's madrasas. Very interesting, this.
Indeed, obviously a very intolerant form of curriculum is taught in these schools, in madrasas I should say. Even worse in the Pakistani education system, to be honest. The national curriculum has been berated by international groups like the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom, stating that the textbooks demonise and caricature minorities, even going as far as labelling Christians as spies for the West. So it's very easy for people to return to anger and hatred towards the minorities amongst them because they already have this preconceived concept that they are demons in their midst.
This is an opportunity for Imran Khan, if he chooses to stand up for those minorities. But politicians who've done that in the past have come under attack and have lost their lives.
This is very true. Obviously, Salman Taseer and Shahbaz Bhatti were both killed in 2011, within 3 months of each other, for calling for freedom for Asia Bibi and for reform of the blasphemy laws of Pakistan. With Imran Khan, I'm not sure how confident I am that he has the appetite for change, not only because of the threat of danger to himself, but also because he has quite openly declared great support for the blasphemy laws. These draconian medieval laws are being used as a tool for persecution. How any government leader can claim that they need to be espoused and championed by the populace, it beggars belief.
Yeah, he's right to say that, actually. Imran Khan is, well, of course, recently elected. Of course, many people in the UK will know him as a very, very good cricketer, former captain of the Pakistani cricket team. He's the Prime Minister now, the President, El Presidente. He's the man. And he does support these draconian blasphemy laws. And that's a very interesting thing. I won't say connected, but there are a couple of Pakistani people I know very well in Manchester and in Greater Manchester. A friend of mine who I've known for many years, who's based in Rochdale, whose name is Imran. And a friend of mine who serves me in the newsagent I go to every morning, a lovely woman called Shumaila. Wonderful woman. And I talk to those people sometimes about Pakistan and about about Islam, and how in some pockets of the country you have people who have a very narrow, very conservative view and understanding of Islam, and why they would support what we would see as genuine lunacy. The idea that somebody should be executed because they insult the Prophet Muhammad. Now, I don't believe in God, or at least in the version of God I was taught growing up. I don't believe in it. But I have great and genuine respect for people who believe in a higher spiritual power or creator. And I wouldn't mock that. No Richard Dawkins am I. I hear some of you saying, of course you're not. You're not nearly as intelligent. Well, but no, I'm not condescending or mocking or deriding of people who believe in a higher spiritual power. What do I know? But organised religion, all the organised religions, I think are mad. And all the organised religions, all of them, the three main, the Abrahamic religions, if you want to call them that, within them, there are people who take a very, very dark ages view of those religions. It's the same in Judaism and Christianity. But we're seeing a lot of it, and we're hearing a lot about it in this country of late because of young Pakistani men grooming young English girls and doing unspeakable things to them and raping them and rape gangs and all of that. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that because you have to be politically correct. You can't talk about that, but it's very serious. And what you're hearing there about Pakistan, some parts of it, there are some Pakistani men in this country and elsewhere, I'm not saying a majority, not even near it, a very, very, very obvious minority, but they're dangerous because they believe the nonsense that we just heard there from the man from the Pakistani Christian Society. They believe this stuff. They believe that you should kill somebody if they draw a cartoon or if they say that the Prophet Muhammad never existed, or if they say something derogatory about the Prophet Muhammad. It's interesting stuff, it really is. And it's a place where a lot of people don't want to go. Thanks for the tweets, by the way. Loads of them. Cartoon drunk tweets. Richie, Imran Khan married into the Illuminati when he married that Jewish woman, daughter of Goldberg banker or something. Can't remember the name exactly. I don't know if I go along with that. I know what you're talking about. The woman's name is Jemima Goldsmith, isn't that right? I think she was with Hugh Grant as well. But I don't know. Hi to Liz Jones, who says comedians must be terrified with the news that editors of magazines who make silly jokes, unfunny jokes about vegans lose their jobs. That's not funny. Agreed. Paul Craven on Jamal Khashoggi says Jamal's father, Adnan, was one of the wealthiest arms dealers in the world. What's it all about? What's going on, Richie? Sibel Edmonds is all over this story. Will be with me in a minute to talk about it. Patricia Braunschweiler, listening in Switzerland. My pal, how you doing, Patricia? Richie, a person loses his job because of a joke about vegans. How pathetic is that? I'm a vegan, yes, but I haven't lost my desire for meat, but not for humour. Give me a break, says Patricia there. And Faisal, speaking of comedians, says they've all been relegated to inane quiz formats where they can't say anything controversial. Anyway, good stuff, right? It's Wednesday's Richie Allen Show, October 31st. Halloween, 'tis Halloween. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we're live to Turkey. And Sibel Edmonds joins me. You don't want to miss her. Later on, Chuck Ocelli, who presents the terrific Ochelli Effect, will be live from New York City. Don't miss that either.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Welcome back. 24 minutes past the hour. Now, as you heard on the news, and as I mentioned a minute ago myself, Turkey's given its first official statement on how it believes the writer Jamal Khashoggi was killed. The Turks have said he was immediately strangled, then dismembered. Irfan Fidan, the chief prosecutor, has been saying this today. There's been a lot of speculation in Turkish media over the last few weeks about the murder at the Saudi consulate, if indeed that's what happened, right? Okay, keep that in mind. Saudi Arabia hasn't commented today, and it won't comment on a meeting that the prosecutor Fidan had with his Saudi counterpart on Monday. The Turkish statement said, in accordance with plans made in advance, the victim was choked to death immediately after entering the Consulate General of Saudi Arabia. His body was then dismembered and destroyed, again in line with advance plans. In Saudi Arabia, as Sky News reporter Alistair Bunkle said, well, they have kind of changed their story in the last few weeks. But then again, so has the Turks, so have the Turkish government, so have the Turkish media, and so has the world's media. It's very, very strange. Let's welcome our first guest to the programme, because she believes that what we're hearing isn't even half the story. She's a brilliant journalist. She's in Turkey right now, setting up a bureau there for NewsBud, which of course is the news agency that she founded. She's the editor and publisher of NewsBud as well. She also founded the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition, and she is the author of books like Classified Woman, the Sibel Edmonds Story, and The Lone Gladio, a political spy thriller. Terrific to have her on the programme. Let's welcome her back, live from Turkey, Sibel Edmonds. Sibel, welcome. How are you?
Well, thank you, Richie, and good to be with you. This is the first audio interview, the first interview I'm giving in months. I left the States about 2 months ago, around August 27th. I was actually in the UK for a couple of weeks, and I came to Turkey around September 9th. And I have been busy running around trying to set up this office and settling my family here. I'm going to be here for at least a year, possibly 2 years. The reason I came here is because a lot of things will be happening on Iran. A lot of things will be happening in the Middle East in general. And I just wanted to position ourselves in such a way that we could have access to sources, especially sources from Iran, because it's impossible to establish contact from Turkey here. And this case, the Khashoggi case, it just was so unexpected that it ended up falling on my lap.
Yeah.
I was not even looking for a case because, as I said, it has been a really roller coaster, bewildering time here. And since the day one of this case, I have been following on this story. I have been in Turkey. I have been interviewing officials, most of them, of course, off the record here, but also my intel sources in the States, because I have many, as you know, government whistleblowers who used to be with the FBI, DOD, CIA, etc. And some of them maintain contact with current people there. And from the day one of this story, as I started reporting on this story, I kept seeing these headlines, this coverage on via MSM, whether it's CNN, especially Al Jazeera, owned by Qataris, and Guardian, every single one of them, NPR, that completely contradicted the evidence obtained. And there were many from the first days of this case, unanswered questions, and none of the really major questions they did not touch intentionally. And they went about this in this very scripted, very scripted narrative. And in order to keep their hands clean, and these are the media, the major ones, such as CNN, such as Washington Post, in order to keep their hands clean, they started doing it this way. So there are some really trashy, garbagey publications in Turkey. We call them here in Turkey, we call them paparazzi media, which is the paparazzi media. These are not investigative journalists. A lot of them have shady agendas. Some of the obscure small ones, such as Yeni Şafak, and when I say small ones, they have recently become big because supposedly they are well connected with government forces here. They would put a bunch of false information. For example, one of them, I will give you an example, is this video with the detailed audio and imagery of the hours-long torture.
Oh, yeah.
And they would attribute it to an unnamed source within the government, correct? They wouldn't name it. Immediately, within 10 minutes, CNN, NPR, Washington Post, New York Times would run this story that they picked up from this paparazzi media in Turkey. They would publish it as a major breaking news headline, saying that they got it from the unnamed source based on this paparazzi media in Turkey, but they would put that either in a small fine print or they wouldn't put it. After maybe an hour, some of the bigger media outlets here, such as TRT World, they are kind of more respectable, or CNN Turk, or the Hürriyet Sabah, they would pick it up and they would say, this is coming from the US, CNN. Well, the beginning, the root of these false information that was being fed to people around the world would be this paparazzi media here in Turkey. Now, interestingly, the person, I'm in a very sensitive position here, but you can look it up, because once I start really naming names, which you will be able to do it, Richie, it's going to get dicey here, but you can look it up. The main person at Yeni Şafak newspaper, that is the originator of all this really grisly false information, happens to be the business partner, the buddy of Jamal Khashoggi.
Yeah.
Okay, they are the same people. So it is through that newspaper that this information gets to be published without any sources cited, without any documents cited. I would be following up with my government sources here. I would say, what do you think about this video? I haven't seen any video. How about audio? There has not been any audio. We have some CCTV footage that we obtained from the street cameras. We have these images, but I am not aware of any video audios. Then I would say, well, isn't this the case because it's written in the newspaper? He's like, I have no idea where they are getting it because we don't have any video. There is no such video. Well, Richie, I don't even have my computers here with me. My cargo got messed up. It's supposed to get here by this coming week. So here with iPhone, since the day 3 of this case, I have been reporting all these developments with first-hand sources, asking about documents, getting the research done with some of the very savvy researchers I have here, putting it out through Twitter, and I have been the only voice countering every single one of these big,
You're the only one.
Ministries.
You're the only one. And I must mention, folks, go to Twitter if you haven't followed Sibel before. It's at Sibel Edmonds. What she's done is she's pinned to the top of her Twitter feed a massive thread beginning, I think, on October 2nd with information after information, with questions, with links to documents. It's really, really, really good stuff. And tragically, I suppose, you know, we mentioned this so many times, it's the sort of thing that should be being done and should be done by the aforementioned CNN and these other agencies you mentioned, but they're just not doing it. And can I ask you this question? This is really important. We're getting a lot of tweets on this, understandably. Sibel Edmonds is our guest. From day one, you were asking a brilliant question. What could this man, who was a noted critic of Saudi Arabia, what could he have said or done that would have led to them killing him now and taking such a risk in doing it in the way that we were told it was done from the word go? I mean, he's always been a critic of the royal family and the country. So what would have led them to do it now in such a grisly way and in such a very dangerous way? That's a great question, and nobody's asking that question.
Oh, well, that's a very good question. If I may, so one minor correction. He was criticizing only a certain faction within the Saudi kingdom, because who they portray as Jamal Khashoggi is not who he was. Number one, for years and years, he hasn't been a journalist. He has been a commentator, and not a full-time one, Richie. Yeah. He has not written more than maybe a handful of editorial commentaries, because this man has had a beef with one of the prince in charge, MBS, and that's a known fact. On the other hand, Khashoggi has been very, very close, intimate associates of the high-level other princes. Some of them are currently in jail. Maybe one of them who disappeared. We don't know what happened to that prince. And not only that, if we go back to his biography, in early 1980s, Khashoggi was an intimate confidant. He was a very good friend of Osama bin Laden. Right. This is during the time that the United States considered Osama bin Laden a great asset, a great partner, because we were fighting the Soviet partly through his troops, in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. This was when Osama bin Laden was on our good side.
A CIA asset, wasn't he? He was a CIA asset. That's right, Sibel.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And that's a known fact that people can go and look it up. It's not some conspiracy theory. So this man, Khashoggi, not as a journalist, he actually as a confidant, as a very, very good friend of Osama bin Laden, from 1982 to 1987, 1988, he spent a lot of time with bin Laden. He traveled with bin Laden all over the world, okay? In fact, in 1992, he was hired, okay, and this is by the Saudi government, the Saudi kingdom. He was hired and had an official position within the Saudi government, their intelligence agency, as a liaison between U.S. intelligence and Saudi intelligence. So this guy worked with the CIA and worked with the Saudi government as an official employee of Saudi Arabia. And you can confirm this. If you were to make phone calls as a journalist, it is on record. He was receiving money from the Saudi government. I don't know how much he was receiving, if he was receiving money from the CIA. So that was his official position. So contrary to what they are saying, this man was not about democracy and freedom and progressive and anti-Saudi kingdom.
Sibel, this is brilliant work. This is brilliant work, because they've created a narrative around this man. This is what you've exposed. They've created this narrative. And if you go to Wikipedia, they've put this narrative that he was some thorn in the Saudi Arabian regime's side. But as you brilliantly have been saying for weeks, the man was an intimate friend, a great friend and confidant of Osama bin Laden. He worked for the Saudi government. Bin Laden was a CIA asset in the 1980s when the Afghans were fighting the Soviets, and it stands to reason that Jamal Khashoggi would have contacts and friends in the CIA as well. This is bizarre. And I know we're jumping around now from point to point, but
you know, that's very important.
Oh, hugely
I'm so
important.
Glad you're emphasizing it, because Richie, after that, he was given a major position by certain NGOs in the United States. That's how he started spending and got his citizenship. He was one of the main actors behind the scenes on all the Arab Spring movement. You know, what we saw unfolding in Libya, what we saw unfolding in Egypt. We know that narrative as well. He was part of these associations. If you start bringing, and anybody can do that, you know, any good researcher can search these NGOs who paid him money, they sent him for all these conferences, they would see his connections, getting paid, working with these NGOs to promote Arab Spring narrative, get money for it. And some of these organizations are funded by George Soros.
Yes.
And that brings us to why he came to Turkey. Because the false narrative, the lies that the media, both here in Turkey and elsewhere, they are putting out, is that he got engaged to this obscure woman. He was previously married in Saudi Arabia. He was U.S. citizen living in Washington, D.C. area, very close to Langley, Virginia, okay, in Northern Virginia. And he wanted to obtain some divorce paper in order to marry this so-called fiancée. But supposedly, these are all lies. I debunked all this. I called the Saudi embassy, okay? This is a lie. He supposedly went to Saudi embassy, and I have lived as foreigners in so many countries. I have lived as someone with triple citizenships, okay?
Yeah.
You go to your embassy or consulate, you say, I need to certify this, I need to get a copy of this, you get it. The best place is embassy. The second best place is consulates, no matter which country you're dealing with. So supposedly, based on the narrative, he went to the DC, Washington, D.C. Saudi embassy, and they told him, no, Jamal, we can't do this paper here. You need to go to this much smaller consulate, travel across the world. You know, you're a U.S. citizen. This is a big Saudi embassy. You need to take this plane ride, 11 hours, go to Istanbul, go to this much smaller consulate. There you can get your divorce paper. That's complete BS, Richie. That did never happen. He went to DC embassy because he was having high-level meetings there. Also, Jamal Khashoggi started relocating to Turkey months ago. He came to Turkey. He started the process of getting residency. He bought a very expensive, over $1 million flat in Istanbul, in a very posh area. Okay?
$1 million flat, did he? Wow, this gets
more than that, because everything is location. When you talk about this mega city, some of the even dumpiest places, it's like San Francisco or London. You know, you get a dumpy little 2-bedroom apartment. If it's in a good upper Manhattan location, you're gonna dish out more than $500,000.
So why did he go to Turkey then? What was he going to be doing there? This is the $64 million question, right? Why? What was his next? What was he supposed to do in Turkey?
He started doing it. Was supposed to do. He started forming these NGOs. A couple of them. One of them is some kind of an Arab Journalist Association. And if you start looking at the heads of these organizations, you're gonna see them as the named sources for a lot of these MSM stories on Khashoggi murder story, okay? And so instead of naming it, you just look it up. I just sent you a couple of photos and links through DM. So, for example, you will see them in pictures, you will see them in images. And these are lucrative NGOs, and they are set up for continuation of Arab Spring with one of the targets, guess who? Saudi Arabia. Because they don't want MBS there. I'm not saying MBS is a good guy. In fact, during my early reporting on this case, because you know I'm not a diplomatic person, Richie, somebody came and said, do you have any biases against Saudi Arabia, kingdom, the way you talk about the Saudis? And I said, of course I do. I said, I hate Saudi kingdom, every single one of them. These people are perverts with oil dollars. They are dirty and they are living lavishly. They are subservient. They have been subservient to the United States. And before that, they were set up by the United Kingdom. I don't like those scumbags. So that's on record. I don't have any love relationship. I don't like. In fact, it's one of those countries, as someone who has lived in 11 countries, has been in 43 countries, I have no desire to set foot in a country like Saudi Arabia, okay? So no, I don't like Saudi Arabia Kingdom. I have made it clear, and it's on the record. People can go and see it.
Do you get tired of that, Sibel? Do you get tired of that? I mean, just briefly, I don't want to waste any time on this, but do you get tired of it? I've been... You know, I came out of commercial, national media myself. Do you get tired when you follow the evidence and it takes you down a certain road that you have to keep justifying yourself? Listen, just because I think Mohammed Bin Salman didn't do this doesn't mean that I think he's a great guy. Do you get tired of that? Do you get tired of having to say that?
The same thing happened, Richie, when I was criticizing what we did in Libya. Suddenly they said, I love Gaddafi. I said, I have nothing to do with Gaddafi. What I'm saying, what we are doing there is wrong. Whether Gaddafi, or same thing with Assad. You know, in order to say we shouldn't be doing what we are doing, all the stuff we are doing to Syria, is not because I think Assad is a great guy. I don't say that for anyone. I don't say it for any country. I'm not pro-presidents. I'm not pro any political heads, and that makes you a very unpopular person, because you have to
tell me about
support a team.
You're absolutely
right. You have
right.
to begin a team, especially in the US, Richie. You have to be either Democrat or you have to be Republican. I'm neither. You have to be either pro-Clinton or you have to be pro-Trump. I'm neither. You have to be either pro-Assad or you have to be... It's just silly. And through this divide and conquer, these animosities, these divisions, they get to do what they wanted to do, the deep state. So Khashoggi came here to set up these NGOs, and he did set them up. He actually had 3 bank accounts here, one personal, one NGO is tax exempt, another one business. In fact, from Istanbul, he took a first-class trip and went to this very lavish conference in London. They are the ones who concoct Arab Springs. They are the ones who concoct it's time for MBS to go and another puppet to be installed, one of the princes, they're one of the perverts. So he went from Istanbul 2 days to London, came back. This is the story. The story is not that he flew here to go to consulate, get divorce paper, and come back to US. That's an absolute lie.
Nonsense. Now, he was there on Arab Spring business. Now, we're getting a lot of tweets on this. Forgive the interruption. I don't like interrupting. No, forgive it. But I'm getting a lot of tweets. I don't want to ignore them. Sibel Edmonds is our guest. Go to newsbud.com if you haven't followed it before. It's terrific. It's great work they've done there. They've achieved a lot in a short space of time. It's proper sourced journalism, completely unbiased, as Sibel herself said. Doesn't make you too popular when you don't come down on one side or another. No. But it's very good stuff, this. So he's in Istanbul on Arab Spring business, maybe with a view to bringing down the House of Saud. Maybe. Right now, if that's the case, right, and I don't doubt your research at all, that, of course, gives a great motive. You don't have to be Lieutenant Columbo, Sibel, to think that the man with the motive to kill him is surely MBS.
Absolutely.
Right.
In the surface, yes. But you should also think this, Richie, okay? Since the time of Mata Hari, okay, Orient Express, Istanbul, Turkey, especially Istanbul, has been a major hub for agents from everywhere, okay? It's CIA agents rolling everywhere. There are agents from Qatar. There are so many operatives from Saudi Arabia. There are operatives from Iran. This is a place, in fact, just a year ago, there was this Iranian media guy. He came out of a restaurant in Istanbul. Some Range Rover passed by. They assassinated him. They put like 65 bullets. They never found out who killed this Iranian guy. Wow. It, of course, never made the headline. But it's the kind of a place you can disappear very easily. You can be assassinated very easily. It's a little bit of a wild, wild west of this region, okay? So for MBS, and I can see for MBS having an absolute reason to see this guy suffocated, dead, okay? Especially a guy like him who is known to be very brutal. I don't doubt that. If you want to do that, Rich, okay, unless you're completely an idiot and all your staff are idiots, why would you do it when there are witnesses coming with this guy to a consulate with the CCTVs everywhere, okay?
Great question.
With all the newspaper friends, editor friends, you're connected with the Turkish government, and torture him all the sloppy way, okay? And then bring in 15 or 18 experts. These are the top trained forensic experts who makes allegedly all this boo-boos mess. For example, according to them, they transport the body, but they leave their ID cards. When they abandon the car, they have notes. I'm like, do they have also a letter signed by MBS in the dashboard? You can look for it. So you would do it, very easily. If they wanted him dead, which I don't have doubt that they wished or they wanted him dead, they could have taken him out via hit and run accident that would never get solved, poison, robbery,
plane crash. Yeah.
He was staying in these hotels. He was going around to restaurants. They would not do it in such an internationally risky, scandalous way. That just doesn't add up. I am not saying that there is no way they had done it. But what I'm saying is there are so many things here that are false. There are no videos. Nobody in the CIA, nobody in Saudi Arabia, nobody in the Turkish government that I have spoken with, okay? That includes some of high-level intel people. Nobody has seen any video audios except CCTVs, okay?
Yeah.
And after they put out this story that he was tortured for hours, he was screaming for his life. When people were listening to these audios, they were horrified. Now the top AG, okay, in Turkey, they just say, as soon as he walked in, before he even really went to the middle of the room, they put him on chokehold, they suffocated him, they killed him, and then they dismembered him. Bam! He didn't even have time to scream or anything. Well, what happens to all the hours-long torture videos and audio? You won't see anything from CNN questioning
Disgraceful, this is disgraceful. And before you came on, I played some audio from Sky News today, disgusting that their foreign correspondent, Alistair Bunkel, explaining what the Turkish government has said today. It's his job as a network news presenter, reporter, to say exactly what you said there. Why has that story changed from this horrible torture, which apparently the CIA director, Gina Haspel, has heard, which is very dubious as well now.
But she hasn't said it publicly.
No, she hasn't. That's right. Very good.
Trump hasn't said anything. They kept saying supposed video. And Mattis says, they didn't give me any video or audio. See, they're keeping their nose clean. That's what I'm saying. In the end, in fact, I have been warning the Turks here, especially Turkish media. And I said, guess what? You're going to be the ones, and your media that's going to be the most disgraced. Because in the end, even though CNN, whether it's the CIA, Trump, they're going to say all the stuff were made up by the either Turkish government or the Turkish media. We basically repeated it. They won't even say that we repeated it without checking knowingly that they were false. They can so easily, especially with the short attention span in the West, they can walk away from all the stuff they supported for weeks and weeks to manage the perception. You have all the world crying out, let's go bomb Saudi, let's get rid of this guy, let's assassinate MBS. They have already accomplished that objective. So it's to backtrack from it, it's not going to make any difference. That's number one. Number two, another thing that people need to look at. You take a look at the last 1 year of what MBS has been doing. I'm not saying they are good or bad. MBS has been signing some really top billion-dollar contracts with China, okay? We don't like that in the U.S., things like that, okay? We don't like that. That kind of gets under our skin. Also, MBS started talking about, well, maybe Turkey is we want S-400 from Russia, and started establishing a little bit cozier relationship with Putin, Russia. We don't like that either, Richie, okay?
Yeah,
we don't like that. We want our puppet to be our puppet, and it's just going to remain in our team. And you don't do as a Saudi prince. And if you look at the other Saudi princes, you won't see it to the degree that this guy has done. Maybe he has given into some hubris. Maybe he thought he is so powerful. But when you do that, you know what starts happening? I've been also following this on the media. I've been waiting since the day one of the case to see when CNN, Washington Post, New York Times are going to change their Saudi kingdom to Saudi regime. Guess what? Boom! Day 9. Everyone at the same time. They started putting Saudi regime, Richie. There it went, boom, Saudi kingdom went away. Now it's Saudi regime. Do you know when that happens? You know that the days of the person is counted.
Numbered. Sibel, so what you're saying, by the way, folks, Sibel Edmonds live on the Richie Allen Show, at Sibel Edmonds on Twitter. Go to newsbud.com for more on this. On the Twitter page, pinned to the top, is a wonderful thread that goes on forever, but it's very good, it's very succinct, because from day one, Sibel has been in Turkey following this. So the neocon military industrial complex in the West is not happy that this guy is becoming a bit more open to relations with the Chinese and the Russians. He's got to go. Wow.
Yes, and the fact that he's a bit, even when you put it in terms of the Saudi kingdoms, they've always been very autocratic. He's a tad too much for their taste. He does some of the stuff maybe too overtly. So his days are absolutely numbered. Now, this also can, sometimes you do something and you also look for other good positive externalities, right? That's one of the things that in econ you're taught when you're even taking econ courses. This comes with some other positive externalities for the deep state. For example, this is now, as we have been seeing, Russiagate is kind of fizzling. People are getting sick and tired of it. It's not going anywhere. It was BS. Hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers have been spent on it, etc. Now, it's kind of hotter to talk about Saudigate. You have the Kushner with Saudi ties. You have Trump with good relationship. So why not kill several birds with one stone?
Brilliant,
which they are doing it already. Just take a look at the narrative.
Let me ask you this, Sibel. Let me ask you this, just before you get back into the narrative. Sibel Edmonds is our guest. We've got about 10 to 12, 15 minutes left on this. I want you to keep that in mind, Sibel. Not that you're not welcome to come back anytime you want. The door's wide open to you anytime you want.
Thank you.
No, it is, genuinely. Newsbud.com. This is a really important question, I think. What, in the meantime, you said Mohammed bin Salman, the prince, he might believe his days are numbered. I think you're right. What can he do in the meantime? What damage can the Saudis, under his direction, what can they do in terms of getting revenge on those that they might perceive to be behind this?
That's a tough question. That's a good question. If you look at the Saudi kingdom, the family, you will see that they are very tightly controlled, tightly knitted. Because from what I have been reading, this is based on just as a researcher reading, I see that the father king is kind of he's stepping into the scene. We are seeing some of the exiled or self-exiled princes, including the king's youngest brothers. They are returning into Saudi Arabia. It's becoming too risky, because you have to also keep in mind, Richie, that the only way for Saudi kingdom to last in Saudi Arabia, that includes bin Salman, is to have the military and intelligence support of the United States. This is an artificially pseudo country built with a pseudo kingdom we have put in there. Today, if the United States were to remove its support of Saudi kingdom through its intelligence, through the CIA, through the military, through DOD, Pentagon, the Saudi kingdom would fall in less than 48 hours.
Really?
You have millions and millions of people who are thirsty for the blood of this kingdom, rightfully so, living, and they have 24 carats golds in palaces that have. This is so disgusting.
It's sick, isn't it? It's properly sick. The question I was asking, and I know you got it, King Salman and what he thinks about this is very interesting. It's what, if any, damage could the Saudis do to the US economy in the short term? And I think you've answered it. The answer is they probably couldn't do very much, really.
No, they won't do anything. And it won't, because their existence depends on the United States. They may put some of the threats out there, but nothing like that is going to happen. They may throw a couple of kicks and blows on Turkey, because it ended up being the proxy country that ended up being in this game that was set up. So it's easier to do, let's say, to a country like Turkey than it is, let's say, to the United States. In the end, as I said, U.S. is going to keep its hands and nose clean. There's not going to be any damage coming. Meanwhile, they're going to milk it with Trump and bashing. There's going to be some investigations instigated by Congress to see how close Kushner was. Those things are given. That's the distraction that they need to have in place for the country to get bogged down, excuse my language, in bullshit and manure, so that the economic crash that is coming it won't be as much forecasted, because U.S.'s economy without Saudi Arabia kind of throwing a kick is already heading towards big time trouble. And I'm not an expert in econ. I have a great expert, Pi E, and his specialty is econ. So that economic crash is coming for U.S. How this is going to play in that, how they can use it as distraction, as a possible distraction, that to me seems pretty feasible. But no, we're not going to see a major blowback from Saudi Arabia against the United States. And as I said, they're going to make most likely Turkey look really bad, because certain media outlets here, certain people let themselves be used and utilized. And they're going to actually pay the price for it, because once they are discarded and once the U.S. media starts saying, oh, it all originated from Turkey, or Turkey did that, they're going to be the one who's going to pick up the really, really bad negative externalities on this. It's going to look really bad for that. And even for me, I was thinking why Turkey would go along with something like this. Turkey has been going through financial hardship too. You know, for example, had they had maybe a video, could they blackmail and say, we will make it poof, go away if you throw $50 billion investments our way? The video would be going away, even if it existed. That's how these games are played. In fact, it's simpler. It's more linear than most people think. You just have to see, you just go chase the money, follow the money, and the general political objectives of the deep state. Then you can see that it's pretty, and the modus operandi doesn't usually change. Unfortunately, since they have seen that it works, public buys it, media sells and markets it, you know, good, they don't have a reason to change their modus operandi. Even though some people like us, we kick, we scream, we expose in our own little groups here because we are the irate minority, majority, every time they fall for it. I was just giving this analogy of Kill Bin Laden operation. Didn't we have this White House photo up? Clinton and Obama, they are biting their nails, watching the live
sleeves rolled up. Yeah, I remember it. Brilliant. I remember it. Absolutely right.
Well, Richie, 2 weeks later, they said, oh, actually, there was no video. Then we said, what the heck was that photo about? The CNN never gave an answer.
Manipulation.
By then it was forgotten.
How frustrating is it for you? I want to congratulate you on Newsbud, and it's genuine, from the heart. Because one of the things I've banged on about, to use that great English phrase, over the years, is for independent content creators to really focus on production values. And your production values are first class. They really are. I mean, it's eminently watchable, your content and the content of your colleagues. It really is. And don't take this as a negative now, because I'm not being negative. No, I'm not. No, I'm not going to criticize. I'm not going to criticize your content. What I was going to say was, for all the brilliance of the production values and the brilliance of the research that you've done on this Khashoggi story, there are forces at work trying and sometimes succeeding in minimising your potential reach. This is the horrendous imbalance that we have. The whole world should be hearing you speak tonight. I shouldn't be talking to you. You should be speaking to BBC News 24 because of your past, you know, because you're a genuine whistleblower with genuine credentials. And yet here you are talking to me, right? I've got 50 to 60,000 live listeners now. It's a drop in the ocean. It's difficult to get this out to a wider audience. Your production values are brilliant. Newsbud is outstanding. And yet there are powers at work trying to make it difficult for people to find your work. How frustrating is that for you?
I don't want to say I have become used to it, because, as you know, I've been around since end of 2001.
Yeah.
So it's been a pretty long journey. At the beginning, it was shocking. I mean, truly shocking. Then frustrating. And one of the things I tell people is, They say, well, look, in US, there is so much freedom. You don't see many journalists getting jailed or killed. But let's say in places, let's say Turkey or other places, you see journalists being jailed or they get assassinated, they disappear. I tell them because in the West, especially in the US, they don't have to. They don't have to kill us, people who are exposing these things, or put us in jail. They set it up, the whole stacks, the way they can do it in such a way that they know that we can't even be a little mosquito bite in terms of nuisance to them. They marginalize you. For example, your social media reach is completely influenced. They manipulate it. Same thing. They make sure you are not on, let's say, CNN or some major outlets. They are able, in the West, they have become so savvy that they are able to keep you little. So you can actually scream and talk, and you can have a group of maybe 10,000 or 50,000 people who follow you, but they know that they can keep you there. So that in some way is even more dangerous, suffocating than in countries that, let's say, they get killed, because at least when they speak or while they are speaking, they are able to garner millions of people listening, or even taking out into the streets and trying to do something about it. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of effect, that kind of influence in countries like US. Had we had that kind of an effect, then we would see more journalists disappearing and getting killed. So I don't know which one we would prefer, Richie. But as far as news, but one of the greatest thing I think we have is we have specialized people. I don't like these people. They say, I know about everything. For example, I don't find anything shameful to say, I'm not an expert on economy. So I'm not going to open my mouth. Or if somebody were to ask me about Brazil politically, I would be the first to say, I am not informed enough to give you an answer on Brazil. I'm not familiar, especially with the modern politics of modern history of Brazil. But I keep myself limited to the Middle East, especially Turkey and Iran. I lived in Iran for 8 years. I speak the language. Central Asia and Caucasus, that has been my specialty for my university degrees, for my research, for my travels. And that is my area. Then we have people like Peter Lee, who's expert on China, whether it's econ China or domestic politics China. He works on the China issue. That's his niche. That's his expertise. Or Professor Philip Kovacevic, who got his degrees in Russia. He teaches in US. He speaks 3-4 languages. He has lived in Central Europe, Eastern Europe, in Russia. That's his specialty. So we try to stick. In some way, people may find it more academic or kind of dry because it doesn't have the jazziness. I think I'm the only one who can sound sometimes passionate and crazy or get angry and end up using kind of let's say my husband calls it being a potty mouth. But other than me, everybody else is so well behaved.
It's not dry.
Really calm.
It's not dry. Do you know what it is? In an era when, sadly, more and more independent content creators, I suppose, to make a niche for themselves, resort to sensationalism. I think what you're doing with News Bud is in vogue now. It's not dry at all. It is a bit more cerebral at times, there's no doubt about it. It's academic, but it's eminently understandable. And you and your colleagues and your fellow content creators, you speak the language of everyday people. And you're not frightened of getting the other side of an argument that maybe you don't particularly agree with, which again has become kind of sadly lacking in the independent media. We've got 2 minutes left today, forgive me, right? And ordinarily we'd keep going now till 7, but I've got another guest. And when I said the door is open, I'd like in the near future, when you have a bit of time, to come on and spend a whole show with me, and we'll talk about you and we'll talk about Iran. I really want to get into Iran with you specifically.
A lot of things will be happening on Iran. This is just a little break in between things, Richie, and you're not too far from me. In fact, Thomas Cook has some really, really cheap flights to Turkey from Manchester Airport. In fact, that's where I landed before I went to Scotland. I drove up to Scotland. But I would like to my studio and my office, little office, not a glitzy studio, a very tiny little thing. It's going to be all set up in 1 week to 10 days. And you have open invitation to visit me here. And if you want to bring your wife, please bring her. You can be our guest, and we can do some shows from my studio here, our studio NewsBud over here. And I really, really appreciate the invite. It's been, the other thing is things have gotten a little bit dicey here in Turkey because people are not only polarized in the United States and let's say
Everywhere.
UK. You see the same thing here as well. You know, people saying, why are you exposing this thing? And watch out, do you want to be the next to be sliced and diced? I'm like, well, you bet the CIA director is not going to travel coming here.
No, that's right.
Into my case if I were to disappear. But things get dicey over here as well. But you have an open invitation as well. And as soon as this office within the next 2 weeks is up and running, I was supposed to have one of my partners, cameraman here. That kind of changed last minute. So a lot of things happened because of that. Whether delayed or not, we're going to be kicking butts from here. And a lot is going to happen. Syria is going to quiet down. It's already quieting down. I'm not saying it's positive or negative. Saudi Arabia, this is going to be forgotten. Nobody's going to be talking about this in a month and a half max. There will be some leftover with Trump. But the next thing is Iran. Iran is a major one, and it was passed from Obama administration to this one. So that's on the plan, and we have positioned ourselves. I have an Iranian passport, but I'm told that it's not good for me to go to Iran at this point. But Iranians are easily able to travel to Turkey. And I have been able to talk with people here in person. You can't do it on the phone. So we're going to be getting a lot of things on Iran, and stay tuned for that.
Well, you're brilliantly placed to bring that information to us. Finally, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for that terrific work, asking the questions that haven't been asked, going into areas, finding out who this Jamal Khashoggi really is. And he's certainly not the man that the mainstream media have portrayed him as. It's terrific work. To read more about it, folks, find Sibel on Twitter. It's at Sibel Edmonds. Go to newsbud.com. Do support it. Do register there. This is genuine, 100% independent, completely unbiased media. I'm recommending it. I watch it. I read it. And I'm delighted that you've come on today. The only other time we spoke was about 6 years ago in London. I enjoyed speaking with you then. It's been too long. Godspeed to you. Best of luck in Turkey with the new Bureau for NewsBud. And I meant it when I said you can come back anytime, Sibel. Great to have you on today.
You're welcome here. Greatly appreciated. And keep up the great work as well, Richie. You're very articulate. And I have become a big admirer, especially in the last few months, because I was so distracted for a while. But once I came back to be able to tune into some shows, which there are not many, I truly appreciate your work. Keep it up and have a great evening.
You're very kind. You too. And thanks to your husband, Matthew, by the way. Give him my kind regards for helping set up the technicals today. Thanks, Sibel. Look after yourself. Bye for now. Thank you, Matthew. I think that was Matthew in the background. Sibel Edmonds, newsbud.com, folks. Find her on Twitter. It's at Sibel Edmonds, Sibel. This is terrific stuff. This angle about Jamal Khashoggi, who this man was, if he is indeed dead. You know, what he really was. Why is the mainstream media not talking about his relationship with Osama bin Laden? Why are they not talking about the fact that he worked for the Saudi government, this government that he's supposed to be so much against? He was obviously connected to the CIA. It's not all cut and dry, is it? Sibel Edmonds quite rightly saying she's not any fan of Prince Mohammed Bin Salman or his brother, the king, at all. But it doesn't make sense that MBS would have this man murdered in this fashion. Was Khashoggi there in Turkey to begin looking into foisting or imposing an Arab Spring on Saudi Arabia? Well, Sibel Edmonds has presented compelling evidence that may very well have been the case. Fascinating stuff. 10.5 minutes past the hour. I'm running slightly over. Going to take a very quick break. Back with plenty more in a minute.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. they become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today.
Welcome back. If you missed any of my conversation with Sibel Edmonds, it will be on podomatic.com with the entire program in around about 1 hour from now. It'll also be on YouTube later on as well. The program automatically uploads to iTunes and to Spotify. All right. Now, I'm not going to read out your tweets, even though they are voluminous. Why? Because I'm a bastard? No, I'm not. But Chuck Ocelli is a great guy and he's agreed to come on the program, and I'm eating into his time right now, so I want to get him on the program. All right? Is that okay? All right, let's give Chuck a ring. It's been a fast old show today, so it has. Let's get him on the line now. Chuck is a really, really interesting guy. He's a terrific broadcaster, and he presents a program which is unmissable. It's called the Ochelli Effect, which broadcasts daily. I'll give you all the links to it through Twitter and through well, I won't do it through Facebook, but I'll get my mate Roger, who's looking after Facebook for me. I'll get him to do that. The Ochelli Effect. What I love about the program is that it not only deals with current events, with geopolitical issues, with domestic politics in the United States, but Chuck is open-minded in terms of he gets into the metaphysical and he goes into areas around the nature of reality. You'll find links to the show and programs on Twitter. I'll give you, as I said, the details to Chuck's website shortly as well. He's done a series of interviews with Jordan Maxwell, which are absolutely brilliant, and we love Jordan. We've also got a mutual friend in Maria Heller, who's a great friend of Chuck's as well. I'm delighted to finally make contact with him. Let's welcome to the show live from New York, Chuck Ocelli. Chuck, welcome.
Not quite live from New York, but you know, it is appropriate to bring me on during Halloween here in the States, because some people think of me as the boogeyman when it comes to independent media. So I do appreciate it, Richie, and your kind words are much appreciated.
They're genuine, Chuck. Where are you? You're not in New York. You're in Florida. Is that right?
Georgia.
Oh, you're in Georgia. All right, good. Yeah. There, I might get that right straight off the bat. No, it's brilliant to have you. I presume then it's early enough there, so you've not got kids banging down your door just yet, Chuck.
Not only my own who bangs down everything he touches, but that's okay. He's 4 years old. He'll get over it. This is what happens when you have an energetic child that you refuse to vaccinate. You know, a lot of subjects I cover, and I do appreciate you bringing up Maria Heller, because I very much, I call her mom, actually.
She won't honestly like that, Chuck. I don't imagine she takes that very well, you calling her mom, but no, I know she loves you.
She's very happy. She's very happy with it, actually. She thinks of me very much as her spiritual son. So those of you that might be a bit upset by Maria, get ready. It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. Let me ask you this, Chuck, right? Because we're going to go to the top of the hour, to the end of the program, and there's a million things we could talk about, and I'm happy for you to talk about anything, because I know you're on top of a lot of stories there today. I'm not sycophantic when I say I love the program, what I've heard of it. I mean it. It's terrific, and I'll be hearing more of it. For our listeners who haven't come across it before, how did you get into it, Chuck? I love asking that question of people I meet for the first time. How did you get into it? Was there something that happened in the world that gave you a moment of pause, that set you on the path you're on now?
Well, look, try and cram it into 60 seconds is what I'm going to do. I was a musician for many years, and during the time I was a musician, I took an interest in the JFK assassination. This is when I was a high school student, and I started to read books. And then I started to call people up, and then I started doing what I didn't realize would be research. Long before the internet and all that stuff, and before Oliver Stone put out his movie. And so anyway, I got deep into that topic, and a couple of personal experiences in my life, including the fact that my father had served in Vietnam, and the United States government denied that he ever did, and absolutely refused to produce a record, and accused me of lying, actually, on official government paperwork by declaring that he had served in Vietnam. The man was destroyed. The short end of that story is the man was destroyed and took his own life in 1976. But anyway, the reality of that is that the United States government absolutely denied that he ever served. This made me extremely angry. I have since rectified that situation, but it took some research. It took some very serious work to get through that. And the JFK assassination, I continued on. And well, then there were authors who needed to interview some rather dangerous subjects. They wanted to talk to people who were in the American Mafia. Now, my past, when I was a teenager, not very clean, to be honest with you. So I knew some of the people they wanted to talk to and had access to some of the organized criminal people, some of the very much on-record killers. I could get a hold of them. I could find them. And I was not afraid to walk into a maximum security prison and sit down with somebody with a large body count on them and interview them on behalf of an author, which I did. So all of this going on, believe it or not, I was still not fully awake. But because of this, I started contacting people that were alternative media personalities, like Jack Blood, like Maria Heller, like James Corbett, like various people who had emerged over the early 2000s. And this is after many years of researching the Kennedy assassination and really assisting a lot of people with their films, their books, their projects, etc. And mainly I was contacting them about the material they were putting out regarding the JFK assassination. When I started listening to them and I started learning more and more and understanding exactly how we had been deceived in this country, exactly how we have been steered to be the cows which will celebrate our own butchers here in this country, I said to myself that something else needs to be done. I have children. I don't want them to grow up in a situation that is any worse than what I have already survived from the 1970s to now. I don't want to see another Vietnam. I don't want to see more generations destroyed, and the false paradigm which has been presented to us via the war on terror is something that needs to come to an end. So what happened? I kept complaining to them. I kept talking to them. I kept feeding them information. And James Corbett, Jack Blood, Clyde Lewis, a couple other people said, you know what? You want to complain about what it is we're doing? Do it yourself.
Get on the air, yeah. Good stuff, Chuck.
And I said, sure. So a bit of encouragement. There I am. So the show actually only started in 2014. But I have since then done more than 1,200 shows.
It's brilliant, Chuck, you know, and I'm not patronizing you when I say this. The talent that you sometimes find, it genuinely moves me. I come from the full background, trained as a producer, trained as a presenter, and then hopefully I've unlearned a lot of what they taught me. And, you know, I hear a lot of poorly put together stuff from people who don't know any better, but they mean well. And then I come across stuff every now and then like yours, and, you know, you didn't have that background, but you did it yourself, and it's fantastic, and it's listenable, and the production is wonderful, and I think this is great, and I want to strangle you, because I've been at it for years, and I think,
here's the funny part, Richie. You know, you said you were classically trained.
Yeah.
My only exposure to radio was having been a musician and having been interviewed on the radio, as far as, you know, working behind the scenes. Here's the funny part about all that. All through that time where I was mostly a heavy metal musician, but I was a musician of all kinds, I also listened to talk radio continuously. And I understood the structure. I understood who was good at presenting things regardless of what their ideas were. I listened. I never slept. So
yeah.
I listened to it constantly, and I understood how presentation worked. Now, as far as production goes, I'm going to make you feel a little worse. Now you might notice the moniker, the Blind JFK Researcher. The reason is I'm legally blind, and I am my own producer at this point. So
I was going to bring it up, Chuck. I was going to bring it up. Yeah, it actually does wind me up. Yeah, it's not. You know, listen, don't take this as a patronizing comment, because it isn't. I would never patronize you. having partial sight or no sight must be a terrible thing, and there must be a lot of problems. I think, you know, when it comes to audio and it comes to radio, I think it might be a benefit, Chuck.
Yeah, well,
without sounding like an idiot now. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sensitivity that I have, which, look, I'm not even thrilled with what it is I'm doing, you understand. I need to evolve more because it is still very imperfect. But I do the very best I can to package it so that it is palatable. You know, sometimes I'm doing an audiobook, but mostly what I'm doing is conversations, right? And the art of conversation is something that a lot of people don't have in their daily lives. They're incapable of communicating with one another. A lot of people blame it on the smart devices, but trust me, people didn't know how to talk to each other long before these things were around. I just strive to make that the thing that reveals the information. And it's guest driven. I'm not the star of my show. On occasion, I do shows by myself, but I mean, the truth is I'm not the star of my show. I bring the very best people that I can find to do a coherent presentation about whatever it is they're presenting. And as you accurately said, I go into the esoteric, the religion, the history, the news, whatever it may or may not be. That is out there that I believe has a serious effect on the world. And unfortunately, it's the negative things which I must cover the most. But I always try to come around to a positive conclusion about it, a solution. What is it that we can do about this? What is it that we can see to change the fact that, okay, here's the ugly history, here's the ugly reality that's been given to us. How about we find a way to adjust this for ourselves? Because we are the solution we're waiting for. Now, this doesn't always put me into a proper category either. I've gotten a lot of hatred because I am a wholly anti-Trump individual, but believe it, I'm not on the left-wing side of the paradigm, although I'm blamed for being on the left-wing side of the paradigm all the time. See, here's the fun part. If you're a lefty, you might think I'm a right-winger. If you're a righty, you might think I'm a left-winger. But in truth, I am in my own
You're
way.
neither, Chuck. And that's always a good sign for me when people get accused of being conservative and then they get accused of being a socialist or a liberal. It's a good sign. What you are, mate, is you're a very good listener. And I think in my experience, and I don't mean in radio, my experience of people is you're lucky if 1 in 10 people are good listeners. And here's something for our audience now. When you're listening to somebody, as I've been listening to Chuck, your palms should start to perspire. Because you expend energy when you're listening, when you're really listening to somebody. It's a very important skill, and it's disappearing out of humanity. It's patently obvious to me, listening to your programs, that you're listening very intently to what your guest is saying, and you genuinely want to hear what they have to say. It's very important, Chuck. Chuck Ocelli is my guest this hour. I'm delighted he's on. Go to Ochelli, Ochelli.com. Listeners are saying, go after him about his mafia connections, Richie. Maybe another day. I'm sure you rubbed up against some beauties, as you told me earlier on when you were in your teens and in your early 20s when you were working for reporters. Fascinating stuff. Let's talk about what's happening to your country, because I have a theory, and my theories are genuinely childish and sometimes immature, but I think the whole Trump thing is actually some sort of elite plan to get more and more people actually re-engaged with the system, Chuck. Am I wrong to think that? What do you think?
I so wish you were wholly American, my friend, because we need more of you. This is exactly correct. And it is horrifying to me that I have witnessed individuals who I thought were thinking for themselves absolutely falling to an appeal for authority, an appeal to authority, I should say, when it comes to this situation. They have literally vested themselves into a savior figure. And there are people who are disenchanted and angry. There has always been a disenchanted, angry, left behind portion of this country. And you know what? It's not necessarily all about race. It's not necessarily all about economics. It's not necessarily all about the alleged representatives that do not represent, well, you and me, because we're not the highest bidders. But it is about all of these things. It is about the fact that a system has been designed to literally squeeze the majority of us so that the upper crust can survive as, plushly as they wish. And here's the facts. Neither side of the alleged political paradigm in this country serve the people. Trump has been an excellent tool. You know how they say, he's fighting the deep state, Richie, don't you know that?
That's right.
First of all, that's a mangled term. Peter Dale Scott coined the term deep politics, and it's a mangled term to call it the deep state. But let's go with their term for a moment. Tell me what serves the deep state best. To keep people distracted and watching their televisions 24/7 while the MSM, the corporate media who is there for profit mostly, but also takes orders from somebody, those people covering this guy 24/7, this is why he has power, over the masses. That's the end of that. There is no he's against the media. There's this battle between him and the media. That is a fallacy. When it comes down to the CIA and the intelligence communities that have grown out of the legitimate attempts to do things here in this country, which have all gone completely illegitimate, we must understand that, first of all, we live in a gangster nation. You want to talk about gangsters and gangsterism? There is no better gangster than the American government. There is a higher body count to what has gone on regarding the military-industrial complex. The last legitimate person who thought they were in charge of this country as president had his brains blown out on November 22nd, 1963, in public in Dallas, Texas. If you don't know who I'm talking about, look it up.
We're not far away from the anniversary, are we, Chuck, either? It's only 3 weeks.
No, not at all.
That's right, yeah.
But that'll be 55 years ago come a couple of weeks from now. But anyway, ever since then, the only guy who I see as being outside of the paradigm, well, here's two exceptions. Richard Nixon thought he could challenge the intelligence community, and since it was too soon to put another bullet into another president, they got rid of him with Watergate. Then there was a guy named Jimmy Carter who also was fool enough to think that maybe he was supposed to be in charge, and they took care of that too. But outside of that, we have had nothing but puppets who are there to amuse the easily amused, and they have served their purpose well.
And Chuck, from Clinton, Bill Clinton, that is, let's say from George H.W. Bush to Bill, to Baby Bush, and to Obama, the policies and the behaviour of those presidents, I believe, and again, I'm not speaking with any expertise, I believe that people were starting to get it. You named some brilliant people earlier on that you have worked with and that you listen to, and many other content creators around the world. We're starting maybe to get through to people that, look, it's not right. These people are not here to enrich us all and make our lives better, that they are puppets. And maybe maybe there was a watershed moment with Obama that people saw through the BS, and maybe Trump had to be given to people to re-energize them in their belief that there is a genuine choice. And that's tragic if that's the case, because as you've pointed out on your program, a million times you've pointed out, everything that Trump said that he would do in the run-up to the election, he's actually done the opposite of. He's not drained the swamp, he's filled it. He's not pulled out of imperialist intervention overseas, he's doubled down on it. And yet, the more Trump behaves like the man that you know he is, Chuck, the more entrenched and the more stubborn his supporters become. I can't figure it out. What's going on?
Yeah, that's the interesting part of all of this, right? And it is also the most disturbing end of it, is that, listen, before he was, selected, and forget about the word elected, put an S in front of it, before he was selected to his current post, let's remember that the rhetoric was, hey, Chuck, listen, and this was in the alternative circles, not the mainstream, okay? Forget the mainstream and the narrative and the opposition. Remember, that is very much like his friends in the WWE, where here's a good guy, here's a bad guy, but they both get paid by the same corporation at the end of the night. Let's talk about the alternative. What happened here is I had people telling me this guy is going to fight Big Pharma. He's going to fight and give us the opportunity to take back control when it comes to this forced vaccination. Yeah. He's going to help us because, Big Pharma has created a program where they've created drug addicts throughout the country through, the opiate crisis, which has been absolutely profitable to, the Eli Lillys and the various other companies out there who have done oh so well, giving us the problem, the reaction, and the solution all through their chemical plants, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Not only that, but Chuck, you're a JFK researcher. You know what he's going to do in 2017? He's going to release all the documents because he believes in the truth. And he's going to show us the truth about 9/11. And you know what else he's going to do? Listen.
Yeah.
2 years now. 2 years now. What have I seen? You again, I hate to go to the JFK thing, but, we were waiting for some 25 years for those files to be released, right? And you know what we got? Very little. There's still over 30,000 documents being withheld, which President Trump had to do absolutely nothing in order for them to be released, and he intervened on behalf of the intelligence community. Have you seen vaccination laws change? Oh, wait a minute. He was also supposed to be an advocate for cannabis while his AG, Jeff Sessions, amps up the war on drugs. I'm sorry. Oh, but we need to worry about the caravan of immigrants, actually, because they're the invaders. Okay, that's fine. So back to the story. Where is your 9/11 truth? Where is your battle with Big Pharma? Well, the first thing he did is sign an executive order to give tax breaks and regulation breaks to make it even easier for Big Pharma to do whatever the hell it wants to people.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. What happened? But still the support is there. He's making America great. Look at the economy. That's an interesting story in and of itself. People have dropped off of the unemployment rolls. These were fake numbers. Everybody knew that 2 years ago. But now they claim that there's something to stick to because it's their guide. Now, there's a combination of things here. There was a legitimate resentment over the idea that they thought a black guy was in charge. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a very serious racial aspect to this. And it's something that, if you think that America is not racist or racialist, in almost all of its thoughts, then, welcome to planet Earth, because you have not been here very long. All right. That's the truth about that. They thought the black guy was in charge, but quite honestly, he was just continuing the Bush Clinton program as had been set out since, 1988?
He dropped more bombs than George W. Bush, didn't he, Obama, in his 2 terms. I think that's a historic fact. That's right, yeah. And Trump has said, well, I'll see that. And I'll raise it, and that's what's going on. Chuck Ocelli is our guest. There's 27 minutes to the top of the hour. I would be remiss, and we talked about listening skills earlier on, and I listened when Chuck said to me at the beginning of this, because you've brought up Big Pharma and Trump's empty promises. You talked about your 4-year-old. You said to me yesterday, my 4-year-old might interrupt the interview, Richie, and I'm kind of hoping that your 4-year-old does. That'll be fun if it happens, genuinely. And you said that you didn't vaccinate your child. I love hearing this. Got to ask you, was there any opposition to that at all, Chuck? Was there any blowback, any roadblocks in your way to not doing that?
Well, sure. There's been lots of that from people trying to pressure me, from other parents who find that out and then don't want their child to play with my child. There's been all this kind of stuff going on. And let me say something. I'm not perfect about this. I had 2 other children and they were vaccinated. And I do believe that my older son was damaged by it. Can I prove it? And could I go to a court? Oh, wait a minute. That's right. Big Pharma has an exemption on that. You have to go to a special vaccine court that, ever after is held in secret if you can actually prove that the damage was done by the vaccine. That's a reality. Go check it out for yourself.
Chuck, do you mind me asking about your 14-year-old? You don't have to talk about him, but what do you think might have happened to him?
Well, suddenly after the not the initial round of vaccinations, because they stick them with a whole bunch of stuff when they're immediately born, but the second round when you go to the pediatrician, when they're babies, immediately after that, my child could no longer hold down his formula. He was spitting everything up and literally starving to death for the inability to consume anything I tried to feed him, and I thought he was going to die. So I took him to the hospital and found out that he was allergic to a particular protein in milk. So we had to adjust what it is we could feed him. And then as time went on, we discovered that he was, allergic to a whole array of things. Turns out that they started saying that he was mildly autistic, or a variety of other labels they put on him. I can see the difficulties, and this is with my first wife, who I'm now divorced from. So she wound up raising him. But as I observed him grow over the years, I recognized that there are problems, and a very, very happy baby is what we had to begin with when we brought him home. A kid who smiled so large that I used to say his whole head smiled. After that, he was a miserable, crying, whimpering mess, and sometimes staring catatonically at things as a baby. Totally, I mean, it's hard to describe what happened. And honestly, I was ignorant at the time. In 2002 and 2003, he's a little older than 14. The 4-year-old is the 4-year-old, but my other boy, who I don't want to go into too many more details about it because it's his business.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, I saw a massive change. I'm convinced. His mother, by the way, is not convinced and thinks that I'm absolutely insane. Well, when my youngest son was born, I'll tell you this very quickly. When my youngest son was born, I had him in the hospital, and they brought us a pediatrician who said, well, it's time to give him his shots. And I had a little discussion and explained to him that he would require security to pull me off of him if he came at my son with that needle. So they started trying to discuss this with me. Well, we need to give him a hepatitis B shot. And I said, well, logically, let me ask you a question. If I can assure you that my infant son is not going to be tattooed, utilize intravenous drugs, or have unprotected sex, what would be the risk of him getting hepatitis B exactly? And therefore, would this not be an unnecessary vaccination? And the doctor simply looked at me with a kind of an odd stare and said, well, I understand what you're saying, but it's on the schedule.
The schedule, Chuck. It's like 26 before 4, is that right? 26 different. That's insane. And you're obviously going to be encountering, I mean, you mentioned about your and thanks for speaking about your older son, and it is personal, and I shouldn't maybe be getting too personal. Thanks for speaking about him. Your boy now, who hasn't had any, by this stage he should have had 25 or 26. As he gets older, you mentioned about the parents of other children being concerned, which is ludicrous, that he's not vaccinated. As you go on and as he goes through what we would call primary school, grade school, as he gets a bit older, high school, they're going to be trying to vaccinate him against all sorts of things, aren't they?
Which is why I'm preparing to homeschool him. Unfortunately, this is what I'm going to have to do. And still, the other thing is, even when he plays with other children in the neighborhood who have been recently vaccinated, quite honestly, here's the reality, by the way, folks. Their vaccinated children shed the crap that they've been injected with and actually get him sick. They make him sick.
Ironically.
Otherwise, this kid, if I don't let him near another child, he is healthier than anybody I know. He doesn't get a cold. He doesn't get ill. Outside of when he's around a child who has been recently vaccinated, and then suddenly he gets, flu-like symptoms and a cold, this kind of thing, or whatever it is they've been vaccinated with. Sometimes it, turns into these little fevers and things. He gets rid of it very quickly because he has a nice, strong immune system. He'd probably have a stronger immune system if I could afford to feed him better. But quite honestly, he's in good shape. But only gets sick when he's been around children who have been vaccinated within the past couple of days.
But
that's
at least,
the only time.
But at least he's not getting all that adjuvant crap, Chuck. So if he's getting, some bugs in that, at least his body will fight them off. I mean, I remember when I was a child, I was only given one vaccination ever. I was given what was called the BCG vaccination. It must have been terribly traumatic, Chuck, because I can roll up my left sleeve now and there are 3 horrible scars on my arm. Most Irish children of my age will have them. It was 3 needles, but it was shots for polio and shots for TB. That's all I ever got. And as a child, I was sent to measles parties, and I would have gotten the measles and the chicken pox, and I'm sure I had the mumps and all of that. That's the irony, But good that he will pick up these bugs, but his own immune system will fight them off anyway. Are you worried, Chuck, that in the future that it's going to become more difficult for parents to do what you've done, which is make, I think, a brilliant decision? He shouldn't have. I mean, David Icke, to be fair, I always said about David's 2-liner or 1-liner about vaccines always summed it up for me. A baby his immune system hasn't even begun to develop, and all of a sudden you're injecting him with a tidal wave of toxic shit. Why would you want to do that? It's a brilliant way of putting it, but it's going to become more difficult for parents to exempt their children in the future, isn't it? It's going to get more Orwellian.
Well, it is already in various. One of the reasons why I live in the state that I do is because you're not mandatorily forced unless you're bringing them into one of these public facilities.
In Georgia, is that right? That's Georgia, so they don't insist on it, Chuck.
It's not as heavily insisted upon as it is in other states. Right. Where I used to live in New Jersey, which, by the way, really quickly, just in case somebody thinks I'm Sicilian and Irish, by the way.
Marvelous combination.
Okay. The name is Sicilian, but I'm half Irish.
Which means that if you don't kill me, you'll have a drink with me. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, good stuff.
Exactly, brother. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. But here's the thing about this vaccination issue is that as you go to different states, they have different policies, and some of them are much more aggressive. In some places, they literally consider it child abuse to not vaccinate.
Christ.
So therefore, I am considering, because I've considered moving to other states, and I've lived in a few other places in this country, and I'll be honest with you, I keep very close track of what the state houses do. If the Georgia State House decides to get more aggressive about it, I'll be in another state, my friend, because I am not going to be here. I mean, I can live with the fact that we don't have legalized cannabis in this state, because you know what, I'll take that risk. But but when it comes down to something like this, I'm not dealing with it. I will pick him up. I will take him to somewhere where they're going to leave me alone.
Here's a question.
Because, yeah.
On that, you know, the thought that you might have to move you and your young lad must be a wonderful thing, by the way. I don't have children. I'd like to have children in the future. And when I hear folks like you talking about your children, it moves me, and I think I'd love to have a son or a daughter. I'm bound to ask this. With everything that's going down, you know, we know you talk about on your show depopulation agendas, and you bring people on to talk about that, credible people, you discuss it. What about people thinking about having children today? I know that the system would prefer that none of us had children. Of course it would. But a part of you begins to wonder, with things being the way they are, why have children at all? And somebody might say, right, Chuck, you're a dad, and you're an experienced dad because, you know, you've got children in their teens. Would you recommend that people have children, Chuck? Here's the question now.
Well, this is a good question. I recommend as follows: do not embrace fear. It's that simple. I am not going to conduct my life based on fear of what they may do to me. I'm not going to conduct my life based on fear, because fear is one of the most counterproductive things in the world. It is exactly the trap that they use to control most people. Here's the truth about fear. That is exactly the handle that they use to steer you. Well, you know, what is racism but fear of somebody different? What is the idea that, you know, you're in that crazed state where you're worried the whole world's coming to get you? You know, if you're listening to Panic Attack Jones over there in Texas, you're listening to that guy. You might be in a constant state of anxiety.
Yeah.
Because he is selling you more fear. And this is something I refuse to do. I am not going to be a fear pornographer. This is not something that I wish to engage in. I realize some people enjoy their state of fear, but at all times, I do never suggest to anybody. I mean, you can be cautious. You can be smart. You do not have to be afraid, and I don't care if it is the larger system, if it is another man, if it is an armed individual, if it is somebody else's God. I am not going to embrace fear. So I'm going to conduct my life as I wish. And you know what? If I'm destroyed for it, if everything I attempt to build is destroyed for it, well, such is the cycle of life as well. And I can't at any moment say, well, I'm afraid to bring a child into this world. I'm afraid to live my life. I refuse it.
Brilliant answer, Chuck. Great answer. And you also make a very salient point about fear porn. Actually, my great friend and colleague, big help to me, Jean Ann Crowley, the actress, is listening to this, and she says Chuck is absolutely right. Fear is their currency. You do on your programme, and I do from time to time here, you have to talk about very ugly things, but not as a way of scaring your audience. There are things that people need to know that are going on. But I think, Chuck, what shines through, what shines out of you is that you've got to empower yourself with knowledge. When everybody knows what's going on, there won't be any need to fear it. Isn't that right? That's ultimately what it is. When everybody eventually sees through the veneer of lies and fear and hate and murder, they won't need to fear it once they know it. That's what it is. Knowledge, ultimately, is what's going to remove all that fear. You do need to talk about ugly things, but you don't have to be screaming at people and telling them that they should buy your range of supplements.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I love another guy who's been on your show, who is also a mutual friend of ours, believe it or not, Mark Windows.
Oh, Mark, lovely guy, Mark. Great guy, yeah.
You know, but listen, and I don't necessarily agree with everything Mark says or does, but I'm going to tell you right now, I respect him, because at no time do you get a hint that this man is screaming in fear or trying to induce panic. What he's saying is, look, confront the situation, right? Maria Heller, same thing. I'm not going to be afraid. What are they going to do? Kill me? Big deal. You know what I'm saying? This is where we're at. You cannot cower in fear. If you cower in fear, then the battle is already over.
Do you believe? From interviewing, now you know Maria much better than I do. I got to know her through working in London and through David Icke, and now she comes on with me every couple of months to chat. And it was Maria who first said to me, have a listen to what Chuck is doing. It's very, very interesting, and it's different and dynamic, which it is, folks. Ochelli Effect is the show. You've got to hear it if you haven't heard it before. Ochelli.com, OCHELLI.com, if you want to find out more about it. There is no other Chuck Ocelli. It's a great name too, by the way. And it's his real name. It's a great name, great radio name.
Which, by the way, it's not about ego as to why I named the website or the show. It was really about, I'm not going to hide.
No, it's the right thing to do, Chuck. It's the right thing to do. I used to say that. I used to say to people years ago in London, oh no, let's call it The Breakfast Show. Let's call it whatever. But no, call it The Richie Allen Show, because it is you. Don't hide from, you know, your opinions or the things that you want to talk about. Patricia Braunschweiler, listening in Switzerland, signing in. Hello there on Twitter. Lots of comments about Chuck on Twitter as well, by the way. People who know Chuck and who have listened to him. It's Ochelli, OCHELLI.com. Because
which, by the way, Richie, if you don't mind, just
jump
quick
in, jump
15
right in.
seconds. The majority of what I do is out there for free, folks. I do 5 nights a week, and it is available to the public at all times. Now, I do have a member section and all that kind of stuff. I have a Patreon page, and I appreciate the support. Patricia happens to be one of my supporters. Hello, Patricia. I call her Patricia B on the show all the time, but that is one of my supporters, and much love to you, Patty. I wanted to tell you, I recently got to speak with her quite a bit off the air, and am very, very happy to have the support of some of the most intelligent and wonderful people. I don't care how large the audience is. It's irrelevant. It is a matter of quality over quantity, and there is a quality person right there.
Great lady.
So thank you, Patricia.
And I've said this 1,000 times, Chuck. I've said this 1,000 times to people who listen to this program. When you download a podcast, when you listen to a live radio show like yours, and when you do it regularly and you like it and you think that it's got something going for it and you think that it's doing something different, I believe people are honour bound to support it. I mean, you must know that the Maria Hellers of the world and Chuck Ocelli and Mark Windows and people like that, you know, they're not getting anything from the BBC licence fee. They're not getting paid for what they do. But in many cases, they're doing it every day of the week. And it does cheese me off. There seems to be, at least in terms of, not everybody, but a large body of people who do listen to and grab information from independent sources. There is a reluctance to support, or there's this just idea, why don't you do it in your spare time? It's a full-time job for people like Chuck Ocelli. It really is. And if you want it to stay around, and if you want him to do it every day, and if you want Maria Heller to do her show every day, and if you like that, and you think it's important, you've got to send the price of a cup of coffee once a month. It's not going to kill you, folks. Couple of bucks, it ain't going to kill you. And it only takes a few hundred people to do it to sustain an excellent radio show. I know it's a bloody soapbox, the last time I'm going to say that, but it's important. Chuck, back to you there, go ahead.
Listen, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make it very clear, though, the majority of what I do, though, is absolutely out there for free. I have a live stream, just like you do, Richie, that runs 24/7. I am even seeking to produce and assist others who have come forward to me and said, you know what, I want to learn how to do things the way that you do it. Because they wish to improve their programs and they have some good ideas, and there are some other people that I'm trying to work with as well. I plan to build a radio network, of mentoring other individuals, because the thing is, I want this to spread. I want the idea that we need to introduce very fearless and different waves of thinking into the equation. Look, the one thing that almost all of us can agree upon is that things have not gone well in recent times. I believe over the course of my lifetime, exactly, things have done nothing but go downhill. Now, I was born in 1972. This is where I mark a serious issue. Of course, I also mark it back to 1963, but that's a story for another day. And be more than happy to discuss the Kennedy assassination with you one day, because that's an area of specialty for me. But the thing is that if you are not thrilled with what it is you're getting from the corporate-sponsored media, the media that sits there and criticizes somebody to death and then runs their commercials in order to shove it down your throat, and make sure to keep Donald Trump in the news cycle 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what nonsense is going on, because there's no need to look at the genocides that are going on the planet. There's no need to look at the fact that the military-industrial complex still needs to have its beasts fed. There's no need to look at the fact that there are individuals who are profiting off of the pain and blood of others, because we can be entertained by exactly how racist was that tweet. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely right.
If you want something different, go get it. And if it's not out there, make it.
I'm like you, Chuck. Listen, one of the things I really want to emphasize, I want to reiterate something you just said. Chuck puts his information out there. He's not charging it. He didn't put it behind a paywall. And he will endeavour to do that as long as he can. I'm sure he wants to do that all the time. I'm the same. I will never put it behind a paywall, ever. Never. But the fact is,
I have bonus stuff.
That's a different thing. But the live show is there for people. That's a different thing. And I've looked at that before. But to people who listen, who enjoy, who share it around, if you are in a position to help out, you should be doing it. It's as simple as that. And we've got about 2.5 minutes left on this, Chuck. It's flown by. It's been brilliant having you on the programme today. It really has. You have no idea. I'm thrilled that you came on. Folks, it's Ochelli.com. There is a funny comment that came in on. I've got to read this out to you, Chuck. You're going to laugh at this. Sure. David Stanford, regular listener to this programme, also listens to you, by the way. He's been listening to your conversations with Jordan. He thought the Ochelli Effect was a scientific term like the Mandela Effect. That's true. He actually thought that. Good. That's brilliant. Either that or he's joking, but I think he's serious. The Ochelli Effect. Maybe, Chuck, in the future, 500 years into the future, when things are a lot better, people will remember the contribution you made, and the Ochelli Effect will be put in the dictionary as some sort of scientific term. But no, it's brilliant. It's great. You're on the air today, of course. Give our listeners the times, Chuck. When are you on live?
Well, that would be okay. So if you're in the eastern part of what they used to call America, the currently occupied, allegedly United States of the artist formerly known as America, if you're in the eastern part of that country, it's 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Now, the GMT is a different time, and you know what? We're about to change our clocks and all that crap anyway, but the fact is that if you look right now, it would be 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And I just want to say really quickly, Richie, that I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here with you. I have not listened to a lot of your shows. I would say, though, that what I have heard with Maria and with Mark, mostly because those are friends of mine, but also with other people you've talked to, I'm extremely grateful to share air with you, my friend.
You're very welcome, Chuck. We don't have time. We don't have time to be listening when you're putting together 5-6 shows a week. We don't have time to be sitting around listening to other people.
But an open invitation to you. I know that by the time I go on air, it's probably 3 in the morning for you.
3 in the morning for me. Yeah, not that I don't sleep that well, but it might peeve off the future Mrs. Allen. But Chuck, we'll arrange it. I'd be delighted to come on. Nobody ever asks me to do anything. and I don't get asked to come on and answer any questions. So
I'd be
honored
just
to do
happened
it.
from the American boogeyman himself. I asked you. You can come on if you can stay up that late. How about that?
I'll tell you what, we'll do it before Christmas. I give you a solemn promise, I definitely will. I'll get a bottle of Jameson's and a glass with a couple of rocks of ice in there, and I'll sit there and have a conversation with you, because it's been a genuine pleasure. Folks, if you haven't checked out Chuck Ocelli before, go to Ochelli.com, find him on YouTube. He's on Twitter as well. There is only one Chuck Ocelli. It's been a pleasure, mate. I love what you're doing. I think it's terrific. It's again, the production values, it's reaching people where maybe others can't reach them, and that can only be a good thing. Chuck, thanks a million, mate, and we'll do it again in the future. Look after yourself. The great Chuck Ocelli, live on the Richie Allen Show from Georgia, not from New York, from Georgia. Fascinating to listen to Chuck, and very important him talking about his 4-year-old son there, and about the draconian implementation of rules and regulations around vaccines that not only is coming down the line in the United States, but coming down the line here in the UK and in Ireland as well. Great guy, lovely to have him on. As I said, check him out. That's pretty much it for the programme. It's flown by today. It's been a busy day for me today, but the programme has flown by. I want to give a massive shout out to Sibel Edmonds, a terrific lady. Great story. Sibel's backstory, as she said, going back to 2001, her time at the FBI, whistleblowing, of course. Newsbud.com is a terrific resource for open source and completely objective journalism. It really is. I can't recommend it enough. Check it out. Her work on the Jamal Khashoggi murder is stellar. It really is. And you just heard Chuck Ocelli there as well, of course. Massive thanks to Chuck, and you'll be hearing from him again in the future, no doubt. That's about it then for today's programme. Happy Halloween, by the way. If you're going out now with your children to do a bit of trick or treating, enjoy it. It must be good fun. I was absolutely tickled pink this morning listening to BBC Radio 5, where listeners were complaining about Osama bin Laden masks. Apparently, University of Leeds, there was a shop selling Osama bin Laden masks, and the university students nearly melted down in offence because there were Osama bin Laden masks. And some Egypt got dressed up as Jimmy Savile. It was in the press today. The disgusting, monstrous paedophile Jimmy Savile. Some guy got dressed up as him, and there was a video, and people got offended by that as well. Yeah, you can be offended by whatever you want to be. I'm not going to get into this because it's too late, and the programme's just over. Look after yourselves and one another. Leaving you with some Stevie Wonder. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Sibel. See you tomorrow, Thursday at 5. Until then, bye now.